Welcome to the Food for Thought series, where we will be sitting down with current thought leaders in the data analytics space to offer you a valuable insight into how they run their practices and their experiences. In today's mini interview, we'll be sitting down with Richard, who is the head of data science and systems at Pilgrim's Food Masters, and he will be discussing the challenges and ways round of delivering a data strategy in a smaller organisation. So welcome, Richard. Hello.
Hi, Natalia.
So let's set the scene for our audience today. Could you tell them a little bit about yourself and the organisation that you work for?
Yeah, sure. So maybe if we kind of go all the way back, I originally kind of graduated as an engineer a long time ago. And my first job was in the railway industry in a railway maintenance company. And I somehow, by luck or happenstance, ended up being put into a team that was responsible for essentially building an Internet of Things platform way before anyone was using that terminology. So we were kind of taking sensor data from trains, we were analysing it in near real time and using that to predict when we thought they were about to break down in order to essentially save money and reduce maintenance costs. And kind of that's how I happened into the data space. And from there, it's been really, really varied in big and small organizations. Consultant predominantly in their energy and utility clients. So helping those clients move to predictive maintenance, use data to make more evidence-based decisions on when they build assets, maintain assets, that kind of stuff, and helping them build and recruit their own internal teams to do that rather than use consultants. And after that, I then went to work for the National Trust as their head of data science, which is a really interesting role, such a complex and broad organization. That's where I first got interested in customer data and marketing analytics. And actually really got interested in how do you use data to help drive a culture change in how people use data to make better, more evidence-based decisions that improve the direction and goals for that company. So really got me involved in data literacy. And then from there, I went to work for one of the UK's largest apprenticeship training companies, with a kind of a real focus being on how do I kind of take that data literacy training and knowledge that I learned from the National Trust, and how do I use that in an apprenticeship company to use that internally to help our staff become more informed about how they improve educational outcomes for our students, and also how do we kind of put a wrapper around that and offer that as a service to their clients for students in other organizations to kind of become more evidence and data driven in their work. And one of the things we really did there, which was really successful, was we built and launched our own data apprenticeship training program for people in many other organizations, particularly in like the retail, hospitality and care sectors. As you said, my current role is head of data science and systems at Pilgrim Food Masters, and within Pilgrims, I work within what they call their accelerator business unit. So Pilgrims itself is a massive, big global multinational company. Pilgrim Food Masters is kind of the UK and Ireland equivalent of that. We've got 3 business units really. One that does meats, so refrigerators, Richmond sausages, like sliced meats, those kinds of products. We've got a chilled meals business. So I guess if you go to a supermarket and you buy a chilled or frozen ready meal, that probably is made by Pilgrim's Food Masters. And then the third business unit, which is the one that I work in, is called accelerators. And that's really where Pilgrims puts its scale up and startup business units, and they kind of grow them to a certain size before they can move into their other business units. And at the moment, there are 2 brands within that business unit that I support. So there's Rollover, which are a hot food to go company, and they make 75% of their revenue by selling hot dogs to other businesses who then sell it onto a consumer. So like stadiums, arenas. So they sell hot dogs to like Manchester United, for example, and they then obviously sell it on match days and at events. And then the other business unit that I support is called Oak House Foods, who are a frozen food delivery company who sell direct to consumer. So they would sell frozen ready meals directly to generally older consumers, so that they've always got food and they to hand or customers that tend to struggle to like prepare and cook their own meals. So my role, I guess, within Pilgrim's Food Masters is to support those 2 businesses on the IT and data front. So I can see my role as having kind of 3 key components. The first is I sit on the leadership team for those businesses. So it's really working with my peers kind of across the leadership team to help make commercial decisions that grow those businesses, bring in more customers, manage costs, those kinds of things. on a day-to-day level, functional level, I manage the IT and data teams for those organizations. So whilst we're part of this massive kind of global business, actually we're run fairly independently. We've got our own systems and processes and IT teams and data teams. So I manage those teams and work with make sure that our internal stakeholders have the tools, the products, the insight that they need to do their day-to-day jobs. And my third role, kind of across the business units, is just to kind of champion data-driven decision-making in everything that we do, not just within my business, but across the wider Pilgrim's business too. So a lot of coaching, supporting other people in other teams to help them get their own insights from their data and help them make business decisions with what they're doing.
Amazing. So you've done a lot, Richard.
Really varied.
And so like in the recent years, so you mentioned you've worked for, larger companies and more smaller size. What do you think are the main differences of implementing a data strategy in a smaller organization compared to those larger ones?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. I think in some ways the challenges or the questions, I guess, that big and small organizations are trying to answer are quite similar and quite often the same. So when I was at the National Trust, for example, we'd be asking questions like, how do I empower our people to make decisions based on data? How do we improve data governance so we've got a single version of the truth that's accessible through like common reports and dashboards? And how do we fix all the legacy stuff that we've got so that we've got like a scalable, sustainable kind of architecture going forward? And those are all exactly the same questions I can talk to my business stakeholders and my peers about every day in my organizations, my two scale-ups I support as well. So I think sometimes the questions are similar, but I guess the how you do that can be quite different. And kind of there's I think there are probably three key areas where kind of I've seen like a big difference between kind of big and small organizations. I think the first is just speed. Like the smaller organizations, and maybe this is a factor that I'm kind of working with scale-ups at the moment, the smaller organizations just work at a much higher velocity than larger organizations. That's not just in terms of like decision making. That definitely is faster. There's not many committees and approval boards that you have to go through. It is definitely decision making is faster. But I'd also say that like new business opportunities just emerge more quickly and you respond to them much more quickly. Yeah. Like literally a month ago, one of the businesses I support got a call from a potential partner wanting to work together on new products. A week later, we met them. A week after that, we'd agreed to do it. A week after that, the solution was at a trade show, and a week after that, we had an MVP in a customer site delivering the new product. So I can't imagine that kind of pace happening in certainly the larger organizations that I've worked in, but definitely happened here. And for a data team and an IT team, kind of what does that mean? It generally means that if someone's kind of trying to work on those opportunities, then they don't want to put in a ticket. They don't want to then have to write the business justification for working on it. They don't want to wait for your task to be prioritized, allocated to an analyst who then works on it for them. Kind of prioritization and that allocation of analyst time needs to happen almost in real time, and much more agility kind of associated with kind of how those teams work to deliver. I think the second area where there is a difference is just budgets. Like smaller organizations generally have smaller budgets, so you have to be much more creative in how you deliver your data strategy. One of the organizations I remember working for years ago spent well over £100,000 on consultants just building the data strategy. That's let alone implementing it. That's just going through the process and building the document that contains it all in. I'd love to have that much money just to implement my data strategy right now. So you do have to be much more creative about how do you implement, where do you get the resources to help you do that, what are you implementing, and then if you're doing something, if you're making an investment, it's got to tick off 2, 3, 4 things all in one go, so you're kind of getting a bigger bang for your buck.
Yeah. And how do you find those right people when you go out? Like, how do you find the right people?
Yeah, recruitment's definitely a challenge. I think it's a challenge generally across the industry. Everyone talks about it, but I think in a smaller organization, it's also a challenge because quite often what I'm looking for is a generalist, so people with kind of T-shaped skills. And we don't have big teams. We don't, like, I look back longingly sometimes to the days of my big organizations where I had a data engineering team and an analytics team and a data science team and a data governance, all these like specialist functions that reported into you. And right now I've got 3 people. My data engineer does analysis, my analyst does a bit of data engineering and data governance. It's kind of really cross-functional. And so what I'm looking to hire is people that can work as a generalist, I guess, across multiple functions rather than a specialist. And those skills are quite hard to find. It often does feel like, and I remember I speak to recruiters quite a lot, it feels like they tell me quite a lot I'm looking for a unicorn, which generally I am. And because I'm a small company, I generally can't afford them as well. So
I hear that all the time.
it's like I can imagine you do. So just finding the right person is really challenging. And also, we're a small company. We've not a well-known household brand, so we don't really have much brand awareness of what we do as a company, let alone us doing data, trying to find the right people. I remember working at the National Trust, and we'd stick a job advert live for a data analyst, don't really promote it, and you'd have 100 people just because of the logo recognition. We depressingly, don't get that anymore. So a few things I've done that seem to really help. One is I spend a lot of time looking internally for internal people. I don't just mean like writing a job advert and sticking it internally or sending an email around saying, oh, we've got this new job, please apply for it. Like, it's like really trying hard to find internal people with the skills and attitude that could work in this kind of role. So much benefit in doing that as well, I found. So like internal people, they know the organization already. They know the key decision makers. Like they know our processes, or most of them, they know what the data looks like. And they know the culture, they know how to get things done in the organization. Whereas if you're bringing someone in, you have to train all of that. And actually, I'm finding that it's actually harder to train all of that and how things work and how to get things done than it is to train the technical skills. So spend a lot of time trying to make sure that our internal people have got the right skills, even if they're not in my team. So in future, they could at least become confident doing data and analysis themselves. I think you do have to become a bit of a brand ambassador as well, and not just for your company, I think, but just your personal brand, and kind of making sure that people know who you are, what you're doing, why you're doing it, and that it's really interesting and varied, and there's real benefit to kind of working in your company or working for you as a person. So things like articles on LinkedIn, which I hate doing, but begrudgingly do it every so often, but like writing articles, writing blogs, attending conferences, presenting, those kinds of things which demonstrate, essentially, if someone Googles you, your name will come up at some point, so they can find that you're doing something interesting in this space. I think that's kind of the way that I think about it. So building a presence means that people want to work for you, so you're not always 100%. Trying to kind of fish in an empty pool. Kind of the last thing I really focus on, and I've kind of mentioned it a little bit already, is I don't really recruit for technical skills. Like, it's nice if they have them, but I recruit for attitude. I think if people are good communicators, I like to have good impact with my stakeholders and have a general level of curiosity about how the world works, or about customers, or about people or employees, then that's the hardest stuff to train for. So I try and recruit for that, which and then if I have to, I'll train like coding skills later. So and in my last organization, which to be fair was an apprenticeship training company, a quarter of my team were all doing a data apprenticeship to increase their technical skills. We didn't recruit for that at all. I definitely recruited for impact and attitude, and it made it much easier to find people. And the people that I found were able to hit the ground running faster because they could build relationships, they could impact stakeholders, they could build those soft skills, which are really hard skills, actually.
Yeah, they are. You kind of forget, like, you find that a lot of companies, they're so focused on the technical side that they forget about, suppose, that stakeholder engagement, that personality, that attitude that you were just talking about. And those are hard, they're hard skills in themselves. But
yeah, they really definitely are. And I think in a data role, most data people aren't the people making day-to-day business decisions. They're a bit like a business partner, I guess, like supporting someone who is making a decision. So obviously the quality of the analysis needs to be good and delivered in a timely way. But probably more importantly, the person that you're delivering the work to has to trust you, and has to have confidence in you as an analyst, as a person, as a business person working in that organization. And you can do brilliant analysis, but if they don't trust you, they won't use it. So building relationships is like the most important thing for me.
Building relationships is key. And how would you go about, so just going back to speed and budget, how do you go about delivering that data strategy when you have to think about these sort of challenges?
Sorry, Natalia, you dropped out there slightly on the question.
Okay. So, well, it's all right. So just going back to the challenge, the talk about speed and budget in a smaller organization, when you're like delivering your data strategy, is there any challenges that you face when it comes to those two areas as such?
Yeah, definitely. So if we'd maybe take speed, I think for me the key to speed is agility, and I don't mean like agile in the kind of Kanban backlog sprint planning kind of way. All of that stuff's brilliant, we use it as well. I mean like agility in the on a sixpence you can increase your velocity or you can change direction like without hesitation, and that's more of a culture and way of working rather than like a set of processes that you have. So trying to build that culture within the team to be agile or flexible or dynamic, whatever the word is that you use, I think is really important. And I think in smaller organizations, I probably think that's slightly easier. I think they're more used to working that way anyway for their kind of business outcomes. They're more used to looking for new and different opportunities. They're smaller, so there's fewer people, fewer committees, fewer decisions, fewer committees to go through to make decisions. And like the line of sight between like an individual contributor in a team and senior management is smaller. So being able to kind of see the impact of the work you're doing more immediately on customer outcome is faster generally. So I think it is probably easier to be more agile in a smaller company. But then building that culture that enables that to happen is really important. And that's kind of especially true in the data, in kind of a data team. And I think one of the ways that kind of manifests, I think, in a data team is that they focus on giving the answer that's good enough. Like 80% of the solution is good enough for most people to make a decision. 100% of the right solution delivered 3 weeks late is too late. You've not helped anyone in that case. So focusing on kind of what's the 80-20 rule is kind of the way that one of the ways that I think about agility and kind of increasing speed within the data team. I think on kind of the budget sense, I think that how do you get more with less or with not very much, I think is really difficult. And I think there are loads of tools out there. There are loads of ways in which you can do that. I think for me, actually, one of the things that I found really interesting working in a smaller organization is trying to link the data strategy back to business value. I think if you ever Google or get consultants in to talk about your data strategy, they'll all talk about kind of linking it back to business value. And I thought I was quite good at this. Like in my last few companies, I can share with you like loads of amazing data strategy documents where I've kind of had, this is a business strategy. It had like 3 pillars associated with it. So we'll do work that attaches to those pillars so we can like trace back, like we're doing this, which means that we're going to get more customers, which means we're going to do whatever. Did loads of things like that. And even doing that, I still really struggle to connect sometimes with like executive leaders in terms of getting buy-in into that data strategy.
Yeah.
And which is really interesting because I thought I was linking it all back to business value. I think what I've kind of discovered in this current role, working and being on the leadership team, is that I wasn't using the right language. Like the leadership teams in lots of organizations talk in the language of P&L, balance sheets, that kind of terminology, which isn't common outside of finance departments in organizations. So what's been really interesting kind of here at Pilgrims is now I know that's how my leadership team talk, and that's how my peers talk to each other. It's taken me a bit of a head stretch to understand some of those terms, to be honest. Then it'd be much easier for me to say, actually, we're going to build a churn model. Yeah, that'll link back to retention, which is one of our strategic pillars. But actually, how does that link back to P&L? How does that benefit the balance sheet? being able to articulate it in that way has actually just made it much easier to just get funding, because I can more easily demonstrate in the language that the business is used to using kind of what I'm trying to deliver. So yeah, I think budget is a challenge. There is less money available in smaller companies, but there's a lot you can do with what you have. But being able to speak the right language and make sure the value is spoken in the terminology that your leadership team use is so important, because that seems to unlock extra money that you didn't think was ever available.
Amazing. And I suppose we can finishing off there, what would you say to kind of smaller organizations? What advice would you give to them?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think if you're a small organization thinking, how do I get started? You probably already have. Like, there'll be someone somewhere in your organization doing something with data. You might not know about it. They're probably not doing it in a strategic way that links back to something that might be a priority, but there's someone doing something somewhere. So I guess the first step is find out who they are. Try and figure out what they're doing. Try and understand what they're doing. You don't have to understand everything they're doing, but at least understanding why they're doing it is important. Make sure they're supported, and actually make sure you give them ownership, so that they kind of really clear that they're not just doing that as a side project. At the end of their desk, they own like data or analytics or the outcome from it for whatever part of the business lies. Make it kind of that kind of roles and responsibilities really clear. You probably are doing something, as I've said. The second thing kind of linked to that is you don't need to break the bank to get started. Like, as I say, you're probably already doing something anyway. And if you're not, start small, low cost, keep it super simple. Like, it's so easy, especially with technology. I think you alluded to earlier. It's so easy to get so complicated so quickly. There is no need to do that. just start super simple and keep focused on the benefit, the business benefit. So whether that's increasing profit, increasing revenue, whatever it is, link it back to that, demonstrate that, and then do the next thing, and then do the next thing, and then do the next thing. Just take how to eat an elephant is like one piece at a time, I guess. And I guess the third thing I'd kind of suggest is focusing on finding the right people and skills. Like, you probably don't need to get overexcited and go and hire a bunch of data scientists. In fact, you definitely don't need to go and hire a bunch of data scientists. I'd definitely say start internally. Look at the people you have. Find people who already work for your business, who are passionate about making a difference, are interested in data and analytics, and just make sure you support them as much as you can, whether that's the right training, coaching, mentoring, so that they can get going on the job straight away with what you already have and what they already know. At some point, you might need to hire an external person or an agency or recruit an external hire. But all they're doing is coming in to help professionalize what you've already started. So put a bit more structure around the work that you're already doing, and put a bit more discipline around all that passion that you've already unlocked with your internal team. So finding the right person for that will be much easier if you know what you've already got, where it is, and what they're doing, and what they're capable of doing, because then you kind of know what gaps you need to fill. So start with what you have, build out from there slowly, focusing on value and the people you already have. It can be what I'd recommend.
Amazing advice. Amazing. Well, thank you for joining us today, Richard. It was great to speak to you.
Thank you so much.